Well, hello there, everyone at WeShare. My name is Roman Krznaric. I am a writer and a public philosopher, and I'm the author of a book called The Good Ancestor: How to Think Long-Term in a Short-Term World. I want to share with you a few little thoughts about it and leave you with a couple of questions for contemplation. Now, the topic I've been interested in the last few years and in this book is about how do we tackle a problem that we all know is there, which is that we live in an age of chronic short-termism. Our politicians can barely see beyond the next election or even the latest tweet. Businesses can't see beyond the quarterly report. Nations sit around international conference tables bickering away while the planet burns and species disappear. And of course, as individuals, we're looking at our phones and clicking on the buy now button. This is the age of the tyranny of the now. And we all know we need more long-term thinking in various different areas. We need long-term thinking to deal with technological risks that might be on the horizon, from artificial intelligence to bioweapons. We need to be planning for the next pandemic that might be on the horizon. We need to be thinking long-term about racial injustices which get passed on from one generation to another, all through time, embedded in criminal justice institutions and in public culture more generally. And of course, we need long-term thinking to deal with the global ecological crisis. And the way I think about this is that we have colonized the future. We treat the future like a distant colonial outpost where we can freely dump ecological degradation and technological risks as if there was nobody there. You know, it's a bit like the way when Britain colonized Australia in the 18th century, 19th century, they drew on a legal doctrine now known as terra nullius, nobody's land. They treated the country as if there were no people then, but of course there were the indigenous people. And in a way, we now treat the future as not just terra nullius, but as tempus nullius, as nobody's time, an uninhabited territory that's ours for the taking. And the tragedy is that future generations aren't here to challenge this pillaging of their inheritance. They have no political rights or representation. They have no influence in the marketplace. Now, it can, I admit, be quite difficult to grasp the scale of this injustice. Now, if you think about it, there are 7.7 billion of us alive today. Over the last 50,000 years, an estimated 100 billion people have been born and died. But in the next 50,000 years, nearly 7 trillion people will be born. And in the next 2 centuries alone, tens of billions of people will be born. Amongst them are your grandchildren and their grandchildren and the friends and communities on whom they'll depend. And someone who really thought about this, who's inspired me a lot, is the immunologist Jonas Salk, who developed the first polio vaccine back in the 1950s. And in later life, he said the big question facing society is this: are we being good ancestors? In other words, are we going to be remembered well by the generations to come? And he thought if we were going to be remembered well, we needed to expand our time horizons. And instead of thinking on a scale of seconds, minutes, and hours, we need to think on a scale of decades, centuries, and millennia. Now, how do we do that? How do we do the great empathic leap, not across space, but through time, not just into the shoes of people in today's world living on the social margins, but into the shoes of people who might not be born for decades or even centuries? Can we make that connection? Well, I think to do that, to start doing that, we can start thinking about the past, thinking about the legacies we've inherited. We've inherited very positive legacies in some ways, the legacies of medical discoveries we still benefit from, or the benefits of cities we still live in, but also there are these negative or destructive inheritances like legacies of racism and colonialism and slavery, creating deep inequities still today that must now be repaired, or legacies that are structurally addicted to endless growth and fossil fuels that must now be transformed. We need to think about, given the legacies we've inherited, what are we going to pass on to the next generation? And picturing them can be difficult. Some cultures have concepts to do this. So in Aotearoa in New Zealand, in Maori culture, there's a concept called whakapapa, which is their word for lineage or genealogy. The idea we're all in a great chain of life going far into the past and long into the future. And it so happens the light is shining here and now, and our task is to shine that light more broadly. But the challenge, of course, is in our hyper-individualistic capitalist consumer culture, we've been cut off from those ancestors. So we need to work hard to imagine the future, but we can do it. We have amazing brains that can dance across time. I can close my eyes and think about my daughter who's 12 years old and imagine her as a 90-year-old. I can imagine her standing up, giving a birthday speech to her friends and family and loved ones and telling them about the legacy that me, her departed ancestor left for her generation? What did I do or not do for their future? And we can all start thinking about the legacy gifts we might leave to future generations. Start thinking long term, send our imaginations into the future. So that is the beginning of some thoughts about how we can start empathizing through time, making that connection with future generations, thinking about our own family members, what their lives might be like as a stepping stone to thinking about all of the people of the future and the planet of the future. So let me now leave you just with two questions for contemplation. One of them is this: what legacy do you want to leave to your family, your community, and to future generations? And the second question is, what are you doing to become a better ancestor? Looking forward to all your thoughts and conversations. Bye for now.